gave up a TV job to start a podcast in your basement. If that doesn't scream midlife crisis, I don't know what does.
It was Championship Sunday here in Indianapolis. What's the mindset then coming in as a defending champion?
I want to win. No, I want to win.
The young lady over my shoulder, Caitlin Clark.
Not the best looking guy. And I don't think anyone's going to sit here and say, Matt Randazzo was really good looking.
What has this last month, 2 months, 3 months been like for you? It's an important fan base for the Fighting Illini, is it not?
It is.
He turned 69 years young last week. You look good, Coach.
Oh, try it. Thank you.
Welcome to a Thursday edition of Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. Thank you for being patient. The internet getting the best of me out here at the Randazzo estate as I look over to Greg Armstrong. We are ready for episode number 4. We are back up and running. Only 9 minutes late. That's not too bad. I want to thank everybody for watching who's supported the podcast so far this week. We're getting really close to 500 subscribers. We are at 490 at the start of the show. I want to see 500 by the end of the week, so hopefully we can get there as well. It's been a great week. We've had the likes of Pat Anger, Cole Rusk, Jess Settles, Chasen Randall, Julian Vandervelde, Jay Kidwell, and many, many more on the show this week. Great lineup for you today. Coming up around 10:45, 10:50, we'll have Iowa's Brock Harding. We'll chat with the sophomore point guard at the University of Iowa, of course, former state champion at Moline. We'll have Brock Harding coming up in just a little bit. Also, in the second half hour, it was for the Illinois basketball team. My good friend Jim Mattson, sports director down in Peoria, will be along to break down everything Illinois. I've been getting some negative feedback about too much Iowa stuff, and I understand it, although Cole Rusk is from Illinois and an Illinois guy. But we'll have Jim Mattson talking Illini sports in the second hour of the show. Also, Greg Armstrong from View from the West podcast is in studio with me the entire time. Greg and I have plenty to get to as we break down a lot going on in the world of sports. But as we do each and every day, before we get to all of that, we will start with the sports headlines that kind of catch your attention today. And we'll start with that college basketball. And it was a big night for the Fighting Illini last night. Without their star, Kasparas Giacosionis, they go and they knock off Penn State at home. They led by 24 at the half. They win 92-51. 3 scorers in double figures. I should say 3 scorers over 20 points, including Morez Johnson. He's playing really well. He came off the bench with 20 points. So they look really, really good. And Brad Underwood afterwards was asked, how do you continue to focus when you're up 24 at the half? Well, his guy is doing a good job staying focused after the 41-point victory.
Look today, and how's it?
That's all we talked about at half. Really, there wasn't anything X's and O-wise other than that they might play a little bit of zone. But that's a mindset. And that's something that the first question I asked at halftime is I said, Ty, what have we always done in these situations? And he goes, put the pedal through the floorboard and bury him. And that's the mindset we want them to have. And that's I didn't have to say it, Ty said it. I just asked the question. And it's what we talk about every day in practice, and we've got to get better at that.
So Illinois now 12-3 on the season, 4-1 in Big Ten play. They will host USC coming up on Saturday. Again, we will talk with Jim Mattson from WEEK down in Peoria coming up in the second hour of the show. A little college basketball closer to home. It was a tough night, I should say, at the Carver Center. Augustana fell 67-62. St. Ambrose, on the other hand, they pick up a home victory over Viterbo. The Bees now 11-3 on the season. Plenty of NFL coaching carousel. The Chicago Bears are literally ready to interview anybody, and that includes Iowa State head coach Matt Campbell. So we'll see if anything percolates between Iowa State and the Chicago Bears. We'll talk a little NFL coming up in just a little bit, but we want to get to our first guest, our co-host for the day, the one and only Greg Armstrong. I threw the Bees in there because, of course, You're over at St. Ambrose doing great things there. The new Duke is what I call you.
I've been called that.
Greg and I go way back. We worked against each other. We worked with each other, and now you're doing a fantastic job with View from the West podcast. We'll get to that in a second, but I want to start with like how we became friends because, and we joke, but you used to not like me.
That's probably accurate.
It's my favorite story. Tell the story because You didn't hate me, but we were competitors.
Yeah.
And we were young, dumb competitors.
I love the TV business. I love working in local media because there is that competition.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I loved about it. And yeah, in the beginning when I was at one station across the river and you were at the station at your station, it was there's competition.
And I was a liar. Let's be honest.
So Friday nights were the most competitive, right? Like that's where you really want to get them. And going back to Dan Pearson, who you interned with Friday nights.
And I got my butt kicked a lot early on.
Yeah, and we were very proud of that. 'Cause I was
Yeah. Yes.
So, shout out to Nick Bull and myself
Yeah.
and Brian Stocking back then, Corey Kuffler
Mitch,
back then.
some guy by the name of Mitch. Didn't he
Mitch
do?
was roaming the halls at Channel 6
Yes,
at the time.
yes.
So we were very proud of our content on Friday nights. Like, right, we always want to get the most games, get the best highlights, yada, yada, yada. And there was a power shift in there eventually. And I give credit to you, and I give credit to Corey Kuffler when he came over to you guys. There was that dynamic. So we're trying to keep up.
When Dan Pearson rode off to FCA, that was a big bonus for us. We missed him, but that's a help on the when you lose your best player or the franchise on one side, it does help out on the other side. But go on.
So Dan Pearson's doing the FCA thing, and he was helping us out a little bit, but it was me and several other guys. Kevin Core, who's still around, still doing it, trying to keep up. And so I never forget seeing you at Brady Street Stadium on a Friday.
I can remember it as well. You're exactly right.
And we're going through how many games you got, and at that point I'm thinking well, he's not gonna lie to me right now. We're already off and rolling.
I'm a really good liar.
And I was trying to be cordial. We're trying to be friendly, right?
Yeah.
Friendly competitors. And you say you got 15 games and somebody bailed and couldn't do this or whatever. And I was like, yeah.
And completely made up a bunch of lies.
And I was like, we're right around the same number. We're gonna get about that many games. So I left thinking all right, we're even footing that night, And then I watched your show and I'm counting games like we would do, like both of us do. And you got 20.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I flat out lied. And I even said I would say to Cuff at the station, I'd be like, I don't know why I lied to Greg today. Because like you said, it's not like I was going to put a bat signal in the air and get more photographers. It is what it is. And but for some reason, I don't know why, but yeah. And then, we worked together for probably 3.5, 4 years.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was, we've had some great groups, and Cuff and I had Celia, Camille. When Greg was there for those 4 years, it was awesome because we all had that same mindset of what we want to do, covering local sports. And we did podcasting together. We did some podcasts together. We did a bunch of different things that we can expand and grow on. So it was a ton of fun. And talk about those years because we did get to do a lot of things that, when you have 3 parts that are equal and all know what they're doing, it makes for a fun sports department.
Well, I think what made our dynamic really unique is that at the time, all 3 of us had been in the area for 10 to 15 years working, but you and Corey both grew up in the Quad Cities. I grew up only an hour and a half outside of the Quad Cities. So we were all really familiar with the local scene, with the local landscape, whether it was high school or college or, everything. So I think that was what really made a unique dynamic.
I just turned your mic on.
Oh. And funny thing is, no one noticed because I was talking loud
probably
enough.
We could probably hear it off of you, but now you sound crystal clear.
Oh, look at that. It's beautiful.
That's the second day in a row I've messed something up, but go on anyways.
I'm a loud talker, so we took care of it. It took care of
Yes.
itself. No, but I think that was what made it really unique is that all of us had that kind of experience factor behind, I think we were all pretty good shooters, pretty, talented, getting good vid and, getting out and getting good stories. And so it was great for me. I loved those 4 years. I was thinking about it last night, just in prep for coming on here.
Yeah.
I mean those were the most influential or the most important years I think in my career because I was working alongside of like we said, talented people who were really invested in sports, but I was challenged by Andy McKay, photographer, and other photographers that were there. That was Scott Weiss, I had to mention it.
There it is. Hey, hold on. We'll drink to Wheezy. Grab your Polar Pop. We'll get a drink to Wheezy.
Yeah.
By the way, thank you for bringing me your Polar Pop. There's nothing better at 9:30 in the morning than see somebody walk in with 44 ounces of Diet Mountain Dew. Not Diet Mountain Dew.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome.
Rome wasn't built in a day. I got to stay in shape. So, yeah, I mean, those people that you don't see on the camera, that's what drives everything that we got to do.
Yeah. I really mean, like, I was really pushed and challenged to be better. I think I came in with experience, like we talked about, but in those years, like, there were, like Scott and Andy and you guys in the sports department, like, pushed it. And how can we, how can you get better? How can we do more? And I'm really proud of the product we put out there. And like we started the podcast back in, I don't know, like 2015.
Yeah.
It was like,
you were always really interested, and I was too, which is weird now because we're both doing it.
Yeah.
But it was always an intriguing future. And I think in our business, I talked with Jay Kidwell the other day on the show. Plug if you want to go watch Jay. It was just a few days
great
ago.
interview. Yeah.
And we always talk about evolving.
Yeah.
You could, in my opinion, the years that you were there, you could see those were the early years of podcasting and what was going on, and you could start to see, like, man, there's a future in doing this kind of stuff. And now that's what you're doing so well on during the falls and sometimes during the spring when you have interviews and all that kind of stuff. Tell me about View from the West podcast. It's something you started, was it 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, this was our 5th football season. So
And
first,
it's grown though, man. I mean, like,
that's
watching it continue to develop is awesome. Tell me about how it gets started and then what you do.
Yeah, so it's kind of like we said, we did the podcast at WQAD in those first couple years, and I always felt like, even going back to when we worked with Dan Pearson, we always talked about there was more coverage available than just the 15 minutes we got on a Friday night for sports or during the week when it was 4 or 5 minutes. I always felt like there was more content that could be talked about, discussed, break down, analyze, make some kind of small predictions, which you're not going to certainly do on the set, in the middle of your sportscast. I just felt like there was more there. And so when I left WQAD, again, I loved what I was doing there. And that was a really hard decision for me at the time.
Yeah.
It was funny because going back to it, when I left, I always talked about, for me and my family, like, this is the right move, and it's so hard to do the job when you have 4 kids. At the time, I'm saying that as you had 4 kids, and you kept doing it, and it was like you were rocking and rolling with it, and I just, I looked around and thought, like, can I have a better work-life balance? And anyway, we're kind of getting off topic, but I loved what I was doing, but it was time to, do something else. Yeah. And so once I got out of the business, it was like, man, I still miss
How do you scratch the itch?
Yeah, like, I still miss some of that, right? Like, no offense to Joe Casillas, I didn't miss the, council meetings on a Thursday night.
That's the first Joe Casillas reference on the off the air. First of many, Jose. First of many.
So I wasn't missing those council meetings per se, but I was missing the, the covering the local teams and covering local sports. And for me, it was always high school football. I mean, I love baseball. Baseball's probably my top sport. That's the one I played the most growing up and through high school.
But you're a White Sox fan, so then obviously you need to find something different.
Yeah, I need to find something else. Exactly. And like, there is a niche of like basketball, like in high school, like my school was a basketball school. That was where we, had the most success and all that. And, but something about football, and it brings communities together, and especially when a program is rocking and rolling, and they're, they're the Friday night, they're the draw, the town is talking about it, and they're there, and something about the event on a Friday night. So I just knew there was more to talk about with high school football, and I just wanted to keep connected, and I just felt like there were, slowly, I didn't realize this at the time when I started the podcast, but slowly newspaper coverage is trickling away, and that's through no fault of reporters. They're just staffing is limited. Yeah. They're working, doing what they can, but like, when the Dispatch Argus and the Quad City Times combined, it's like you saw the writing on the wall. Like, that's not a good sign. And you don't see the coverage of Anawan Wethersfield like you used to. And they're a good program, right? And they're consistently good. You don't even really see as much coverage on Geneseo or on Kiwani or on, so it's like, I just felt like there was more there to talk about. Yeah. And so I was just ready to fill that void. And so as we've continued to grow, it's really cool to learn about other communities who've kind of discovered what we're talking about, and we're talking about their teams, and it's been fun.
And I think that's the thing about it. and go subscribe to it. View from the West. Obviously, it's not.
Do you subscribe or do you
sub?
subscribe?
I'm really working on that. Subscribe. I hate Pat Anger.
I was gonna say.
By the way, we did an anger management on Monday,
Yeah.
and he's going to give life advice every week.
I love it.
He already sent me next week's.
Oh, look at that!
It's already pre-recorded and everything.
Man.
It doesn't get off the hook for me on the show, but it's already pre-recorded.
You realized earlier when you were talking about all the people the Bears were interviewing, you reached up and grabbed the Pat Anger bobblehead. I thought you were going to say the Pat Anger was applying for the job.
No, but everybody's still looking for their Dan Campbell.
Oh, no
Everybody's
kidding.
still
No
looking
kidding. Well,
for their
maybe
Dan
on his
Campbell.
staff, we'll find one.
Yeah, and it could be a Campbell, just a Matt instead of a Dan. Anyways, yeah. So the one thing I kind of find out about Friday nights, and now I'm completely off of where I was going. What were we talking about? We were talking about the View from the West podcast.
Yeah.
So go and subscribe to it, and it's great content. But talking with people, you can on Friday nights. People want more.
Yeah.
And it's not a negative for what we've done, and we do a great job
No.
with it. And I think what the score does that's awesome is, and we'll keep people at games longer. Like you've stayed an entire game for us,
Yeah.
and giving but now people want more than just like 45 seconds, a minute. I mean, that's great. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
and they want to hear people analyze it and talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you've kind of took the ball and ran with it, because people don't just want to see the game. They want somebody talking about their kids, not just after the game, but on Tuesdays when you do the pod
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's taken it to another level of big boy coverage for high school sports. It's what you see in the NFL when it comes to the NFL Network and those kind of things.
Yeah, I think so. You know, going kind of backstory, I had been in the Quad Cities for a year, about 05, 06, and I interviewed, flew out to Bristol, Connecticut, and interviewed
wow.
for a job at ESPN.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it was like at first it was a producer job, and then as I was there, I was there like for 5 hours. I was there like the whole day.
Yeah.
And in the course of being there, I told them like I can edit, I can shoot, I can do whatever. And a lot of their shooting is done, you know, through freelance work, you know, around the country.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of their editing is done in-house, but that would be what I would be doing, would be in-house. And it would be editing highlights that were sent down from a feed, you know, I mean,
yeah.
you know, kind of on the national level. And I remember leaving, being really excited because it was ESPN,
Yeah.
and I had essentially been offered the job.
Wow.
And another crazy story. I leave ESPN's campus, and I have like an hour to return a rental car and get on a plane. It was like the craziest hour of my life. I made it.
How do I not know any of this?
I don't
Go
know.
on. I'm at the edge. I'm like wondering what's going to happen, thinking that you actually worked that. I mean,
No. So I get back.
I know
and,
the
like,
answer because you've been here.
I
but-
talked about it with my wife. Not my wife at the time, but talked about it with Becca. And
She was one of your girlfriends at the time?
I see what you did there.
All right, go on.
So in talking to her and talking to my brother who ended up working in this market, I felt like I would have missed going out and covering schools, whether it was high school level or even getting to the college level like Ambrose and Augustana. I felt like I was missing out on being able to tell those stories that ESPN isn't telling, right? Like part of what I really loved about covering local high school sports over even like going to an Iowa game for me personally was like, there's going to be 10 other outlets telling that story about Iowa. And I want to try to tell the best one, certainly. But what I really loved was going to Ridgewood basketball and being the only one doing a story about their, 18-0 start or whatever it was. That to me
what
was
I loved
the draw.
about Greg was he would get, and we knew it.
Yeah.
He would get his teams. He would get his crushes, we'd call them, because like one year, like it was Muscatine.
Yeah.
It was Galesburg, Berg Pride, baby.
Berg Pride, yeah.
I mean,
well,
you
there
could
was a
tell-
Ridgewood basketball team a couple years.
Yes,
Yeah. Yep.
absolutely. So, and I think, and people ask me like, hey, do you miss what you did? And I mean, I don't right now, but I think there's going to be days like Fridays in the fall where like I'm going to be like, man, I miss the thrill of the hunt, the running around and getting it. But like, we're going to figure out ways to scratch that itch as well. So that's the nice part about it, is you can think of different ways to do different things. But no, it's been amazing. Greg Armstrong's here with us all 2 hours. Sorry for the late start. MediaCom. So, and I'm not going to bash MediaCom here, but we have MediaCom Internet. And 2 days ago, Kakert was here to start the show.
Yeah.
And it's same thing. The internet went out as we were doing a little countdown to start, but it popped right back on. And later in the day, I was telling my wife about it. She's like, yeah, I got a text message at like 10 o'clock saying that we're going to be working on on the internet in your area from 10 to noon. It's my showtime.
Seems problematic.
And I'm like, well, thank God nothing happened. Well, sure enough, and I don't know, my wife's out of town now, so I don't know, but like, yeah, all of a sudden the internet went down. And luckily I did have some people text me like, hey, I don't see you. So that means people are watching, but we're back up and running, and I have no idea if we are still running, but hopefully they quit working on it
recently
for the next couple hours so we can do this. Coming up on today's show, Brock Harding will join us in just a little bit around 10:45, 10:50. We'll talk about their thrilling victory over Nebraska the other night. We'll also look ahead to Indiana coming up this weekend. Second hour of the show, the Illini with a big victory last night, basketball-wise, Jim Mattson, and we'll talk a little bit about covering local sports with Jim as well, plus a bunch with the Illini for basketball and football. So thanks for joining us on a Thursday. Greg Armstrong is in the house. And so if people are wondering about View from the West, talk about its growth, talk about what you guys are doing and all those kind of things before we move on to other sports topics.
So we had the plan to start. I say we, but at the time it was just me.
Yeah.
Like I was planning to start in the fall of 2020. And obviously that football season didn't happen in Illinois at all. There was not even a hybrid football season. So then through that like spring of 2020, or I guess it would have been the spring of 2021, we I had had the kind of the ball rolling and did some interviews with coaches and just kind of like slowly did some like interview podcasts. And then I was just trying to find a co-host, and I wasn't really sure where I was going to go. And I knew, Mitch Stormer, who'd been an intern at Channel 6 back when we were working for the Highlight Zone, and we had stayed in contact. We'd always kind of joked about high school football and talked back and forth, and he's a Morrison guy, but he had moved out of the area. He lives in Ohio. So I knew he was a uniform guy. He's a big,
you guys in your uniforms.
a big uniform guy. So I said, Mitch, I have this podcast I'm starting up, and I want to have some fun and do like a full uniform episode where we like talk about uniforms, take like our best ones from each conference.
I remember that episode.
And put them against each other. It was great. It was a ton of fun. And I don't know if Mitch at the time thought that he was like signing a unlimited contract to be on the show.
A lifetime contract.
A lifetime contract. But here he is 5 years later, 5 football seasons later, and he's still showing up on the Zoom call and still ready to talk.
So it's around Tuesdays you record for the week?
We record
during football
Tuesdays.
season.
Tuesday episodes come out, and then on Friday nights, usually more often than not, I would say about 8-ish weeks out of the season. Maybe we'll take 1 week off. We'll do a Instant Reacts podcast where we hop on the air and talk right after Friday night games are over. That one's posted on Saturday mornings. Moving forward, we might be looking at like doing some kind of live Friday night, so people who are interested after games.
And here's
the
thing is, and you're looking at some of the stuff I do, and you've got great equipment and you're upgrading and all that, but like you can literally say, and WQAD had coaches come on, or we'd have Zoom calls, and like that's so easy to do.
Yeah.
And like not instead of just listening to Brian Stocking be negative the entire time, you can do those kind of things and bring on a Jeremy Adolphson or those kind of guys. So I don't know why Jeremy just popped in my head, but he did. So View from the West podcast, go check it out. It is a ton of fun. And kind of because you've in a way, and I've told you this already, but you've inspired me because it's the same situation. And I've had Johnny in here this week and other people that have like Tom Kakert who had to deal with me a lot for a few months as I tried to figure out what the heck I was going to do. And he was one of the guys that I'm like, look at what Greg has built. And I can do anything Greg can do better, is what I would say. I didn't say that. So it's been a lot of fun. Your ties here to the Quad Cities, obviously you're not from here. Your wife is from here.
Yeah.
But you talk about this area because it does make you feel like home. Mm-hmm. And we talk about coaches and referees even, and the Jason Foys and all those kind of people. Like it is a great community to be involved in when it comes to local sports. I've really,
fell in love with this community, I guess. I mean, when I first moved here, I thought, like I said, I interviewed at ESPN and was kind of thinking maybe I'll be here for 5 years. And you hear a lot of people say that, right? Like, I'm going to start here and then I'm going to move on. And it was like, we settled here, and my wife and I had talked about, like, do we want to go anywhere else? And we kind of tossed around some ideas. And I think the whole time, like, we wanted to stay close to family, and her family's not too far out of town. I'm from Ottawa, Illinois, so an hour and 30 minutes, so not too far either. And it works for us. And looking at like the high school landscape, I really like that you have the Iowa and the Illinois side, and I don't cover the Iowa side as much, when I did, like when I was in TV, I focused on Illinois, but I think it makes for a unique area, and you also have a lot of big metro schools like the Rock Island and Moline that are playing, some of the real big ones, especially when they get into state tournament level stuff, like they're playing among the best teams in the state. But then you also have that really, drive an hour out of town and you find some amazing small communities.
And that's the thing is when you drive into a small town and you look up and you're like, I don't know where the field is.
Oh, yeah.
And you think, oh, Dazzo, I'm in trouble. But if you look up and you're like, and you just go towards the lights and everybody in that town is there.
Yeah, you've given people directions that way.
Oh,
like
Dazzo.
The poor intern who didn't know where he's going, you just say, look for the lights.
Yes,
that's all you do.
Look up. There's everybody's gone. It's dark. Just look up and go towards the light.
And it's true.
And and that's where you find it. It is a special vibe, a special. Later in the show, we're going to break down some I don't want to say issues when it comes to high school football, but there's a lot of different hot topics, especially when it comes to private and public and all those kind of things. So we'll get a lot into that coming up in just a little bit. Other issues and topics of the day. I know you're a Bears fan.
Yes.
They're interviewing everybody. In fact, I'm scheduled to go up on Saturday.
Well, good.
And meet with them.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll go very well, but especially when I tell them I hate the Bears. But your thoughts as a Bears fan on where this goes to?
So I just had a big text thread with some college buddies of mine, and one of the guys in the group chat is not a Bears fan, and he just insists that Pete Carroll, you got to go with Pete Carroll, right? He's the veteran. He's the most experienced, whatever. And
normalcy is the thing. Like, I mean, it's not bad to have normalcy is the best way to say it, but like you're going to have the floor is pretty high with Pete Carroll.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be a disaster.
But here's the thing, is like he's
He wouldn't be my
73
pick,
years
but I think-
old. He's 73 years old now.
Yeah.
So like, why are you hiring a 73-year-old with a quarterback who you're probably trying to build around in his second year?
Yeah.
Let's try to get a guy who's going to be here for 5, 6 years.
So are you a Ben Johnson fan? Are you a Mike Vrabel fan? Are you a...
I don't know enough about, I mean, I know Mike Vrabel. I don't know enough about him, like, coaching-wise. To me, the logical choice seems like Ben Johnson. It's an offensive...
Stay away.
It's an offensive mind
Yeah.
who started with a Lions team that was looking to rebuild.
Same situation.
Yeah, very similar situation. And now you've learned under Dan Campbell, who clearly is someone who can build a culture.
The thing with Ben Johnson, and he's super smart, so he'll figure it out. But you look at what he does when it comes to their offense. It's a read offense. It's a go through progressions offense.
Okay.
It's that type of offense. It's not what you've seen from Caleb Williams so far. But that's not saying it can't be what Caleb Williams is. The poor guy hasn't been coached well yet. So, but he's more athleticism, arm strength, like that kind of stuff. So I don't know if it's a perfect marriage, but like I said, Ben Johnson's going to come in and take the talent that he has and cater an offense around that, and I'm sure it'll go big places. Yeah. There is something to be said about that coordinators don't always pan out the way it does. If I was as a Bears hater, I can't stress that enough if people have been watching the show. Like,
Don't you love that you can say that?
Well, I hate y'all because like they would make fun of the Lions, but they're the same. They're just as bad. It's like,
absolutely.
It's like one kid making fun of another kid, and they're both dorks.
I don't see no Bears fan can realistically make any sort of argument about like franchises anymore. Like I think several years ago when the Lions were still in their best years,
were
0-16,
winning. Yeah.
Well, but even in the years that were like good Lions years, where it was like 9 wins or whatever, 9-10 wins.
Yeah.
Like even in those years, you still thought like, yeah, but it's still the Bears franchise compared to the Lions.
Yeah,
now it's like no honest Bears fan can say.
I would never argue for the Lions resume. I would just argue against the Bears. Because I grew up I think we probably have. 85's been a minute. Like I know there was like was it 05, 06? What year did they go with Rex?
Yeah, it was
03.
I can't remember. They played in the Super Bowl was in 06. I think,
So yeah, 05, I mean that's even 20 years away, which is crazy. So I don't want to get down that road too far. Just the Bears are awful, and I don't mean it like. And most of their fans are great, and I can have great conversations with you and Weezy, but just some of them. But that's all fan bases. Every fan base, because fan is short for fanatic, and that just it's not a good mix. But anyways, with that being said, as somebody who doesn't want to see them do well, I don't want to see them get Mike Vrabel. I think that's the culture guy that would turn things around and do good things. I don't want to see him get Ben Johnson because I don't want him to take my guy, and I like him too much for him to go. And I think it would be weird in the division and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
When you hear Matt Campbell,
that one kind of
does that surprise you?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, that seems like a culture type of guy, right?
Yeah.
Like he took the Iowa State job when it was not a very appealing job.
Yeah.
And has he turned down NFL jobs? Do we know that over the years?
I don't know if he's turned down. But here's the thing that like popped out to me. It reminded me of when the Bulls hired Hoiberg.
Oh, yeah.
Like it was like the Chicago pro team went to Iowa State to find their coach.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're going. I mean, this is
No.
probably an interview that doesn't go anywhere and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But I just and because I'm the same old Lions type of guy, like the Lions would find a way to mess it up. I'm just banking on the fact that the Bears will find a way to mess it up when it comes to that organization. And not harping on anything. But when it does turn around, it takes that culture from the ground up to do it. That's why if I was a Bears fan, I want him to get rid of. I would want him to start over. And not have like a new head coach 1 year, new OC 1 year, new GM 1 year. Get on the same page with things.
Yeah.
I think that's what Ben Johnson wants. Is he wants his own GM. He wants his own guy to work with.
Yeah.
I think Ryan Poles knows that, and so he's like, I don't want him coming and me getting fired and all those kind of things. Before we get to Brock here in just a few minutes, college football wise.
Yeah.
You're a Northwestern fan, but I know you covered a lot of Iowa when you were with us and all that kind of stuff. Thoughts on the whole college football, and we'll get into some predictions for tonight in a little bit.
Okay.
There's a semifinal tonight, but your thoughts on the whole college football landscape of I know that's a big question to get to. Just give me, but like when it comes to the transfer portal, the NIL, it's just a different vibe than when we grew up.
Yeah, it is. And I heard you and Johnny talking about it on the episode the other day, and I agreed with what you guys said.
Never agree with John Marks. The guy's ego.
He's very complimentary to me though, so I'll agree.
He
with that.
is.
Yeah,
he is.
So I'll agree with him that. But no, but and I had the conversation with my dad yesterday, where like you said, it's a different world than it was, but I think in a good way in a lot of aspects because you get Coach Smith, whatever, who recruits you and says, hey, you come to this university and we're going to build around you. We're going to win. Here's our culture. And then the next year that guy's gone.
Yeah.
So then that kid is stuck.
Yeah.
And it would have been not impossible to transfer. It was a lot harder back then.
Oh yeah.
So how is that fair to a student athlete who signed up to be with this coach and now you're done? And talking about Johnny's son, who you establish relationships, right? Like as a special teams guy, he had his special teams coach. So even if the head coach is still there, your special teams coach is gone.
Yeah.
Somebody else comes in who doesn't know you. If it's a big enough program, maybe you don't really have a direct connection with the head coach. There's just things that can get lost in there, and that did not seem fair to the student athlete.
No, I agree.
And I think that when you look at players opting out of bowl games, I hear a lot of old-fashioned mindset saying, why don't they play? Why don't they care about their program? Why, whatever. There's too much at stake for a lot of these players to risk anything in a game that for them personally probably doesn't mean a whole lot. You know, like, does it mean something for the program? Yeah, it does. It's going to be a trophy in the trophy case. But for some individuals, it doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot for them. So I don't fault players for not playing in a bowl game. What I wish they would do is move the transfer portal back until after bowl games are done.
Yep.
And I don't know the logistics of all of it and if that'd be possible, but it seems like that would control some of the,
the sports year and the academic year don't line up.
That's a good
so
point.
In order, they
That's a good
have to
point.
open it so that they can get to the next place by the next semester.
I teach at a college, so I should think about
Yes,
that.
there's a reason why you're sitting here. Is because you guys are still on break.
That's true.
I was telling my oldest Charlie, because he's in high school, and we were talking about going back to after the break, and I'm like, it was a long break for you guys because they had an extra day at the end because kids don't go to school anymore.
Okay.
I don't know if you knew that, but it's like every other day. Like my wife's like, hey, don't forget the kids have a half day. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Go to school, learn. But and I was like, wait till you get to high school or to college, because it's like finals and like what I said to him was like somewhere in the December teens, like the 14th, 15th, kind of that area, and then you're done and you don't go back to like late January. And he's like, what, really? And he goes, what did you do the whole time? I'm like, oh. Those stories are for another day, son.
That's talk. An off the air.
That's an all. Yeah, you got at least 5 years before I could tell you that, and your mom is still going to yell at me when I tell you that. So, but yeah, that's what I think they got to align everything so that, and also regulations wise. I mean, they have to figure out a way. It's the wild, wild west out there right now. To have a kid like Caden Proctor, and not bashing the kid at all, but have him go into the transfer portal. First off, decommit to Iowa, go to Alabama. Then go into the transfer portal, go to Iowa. There for like 3 weeks and decide to go back into the transfer portal and go back to Alabama is mind-boggling to me.
Well, and like my question is like, so did he like go to classes for 3 weeks or like, it's just weird stories like
That's
that.
cute.
Like
He doesn't go to class. That's cute.
But you
yeah,
know
they go to
right?
classes.
Like, it's a weird thing. Like, he was in Iowa City. Like, people confirm that. Like,
yeah.
he was there.
Camille was up there and did an interview with him.
Yeah, so
he went to the basketball game with the day he committed, and they did an
Yeah.
interview and all that kind of stuff.
It's just bizarre to me to think, like, you're there for 3 weeks. What changes in 3 weeks that all of a sudden, like...
And I don't know, and I can't remember and that's why I shouldn't say, but it's my show. I can say what I want. I think he didn't get paid fully, but I'm sure he got, like, an installment of something.
Yeah.
Like maybe that first installment of whatever you're going to get to come to a school.
Yeah.
So like, did you just go to the portal, go to some place to get a little bit of a paycheck to go back to it? I don't know all that. So
no.
Anyways,
but there's a fine line where students can benefit from it, and then the other side of it, like students taking advantage of it. And so the Caden Proctor situation is one that is unique, right? It's weird because he's a highly sought after, student athlete. And then not just on him, but it can be a fine line of like, but it's hard to judge. Like, what's the right reasons, right? Like, how do you judge who's doing it for the right reasons?
You know what's funny is this is day 4, and I've not had like a water or anything to drink during the show. I just kind of go. And I can't stop doing this. Off the Air brought to you by Polk Pops.
Not a sponsor yet, but could be.
I've been using that. I've been using the heck out of that. So later in the show, we're going to break down the college football semifinals. One's tonight, one's tomorrow. Kind of give some picks. I'll also speak a little gambling for people that are out there. I have a play or two that you might want to use. It's your money, not mine. That's actually not mine. It's my wife's, but that's a whole different story. So we'll do that coming up. We'll also talk about the NFL playoffs. A big weekend of NFL playoffs coming up as well. And I want to talk to you about like some issues in high school football and how it can continue to get better, because there's always issues when it comes to youth sports and high school sports. So we'll get to those. Greg Armstrong's in the entire 2 hours here, and coming up right after the break, we'll be joined by
I have a housewarming gift.
You do?
I do. I don't have my own bobblehead, so I'll
You should have your own bobblehead. Have you thought of the you from the? I do like the product placement.
Oh yeah.
Well, and it's funny because I didn't apply this time, but like I was gonna wear my hat.
Yes.
But like sometimes I record stuff, sometimes I don't. So I got to keep everything. I can't just be putting hats on and off. But yeah, no, the swag is great.
It's been Breed Loves. Shout out to Breed Loves Sporting Goods in Kewanee.
Could be a sponsor.
They're an amazing sponsor for us.
Yeah, they are
great. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen how great of a sponsor they are.
Yes,
I'd love to see it up close in person. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. So anyways, Greg Armstrong's here. I'm going to get a present coming up in a little bit. We got a break, and then Brock Harding is here in 2 minutes.
Hello, Dan Pearson here of FCA. Our team is thrilled to support Off the Air with our good friend Matt Randazzo. We share the view of the power of sport when it comes to relationships, including the influence of the coach. FCA believes the coach is the most influential person in America. Matt celebrates local coaches and athletes. His content is informational, insightful, and inspirational. Our Fellowship of Christian Athlete team loves partnering with Off the Air with Matt Randazzo while we engage, equip, and empower coaches and athletes in our 23 counties. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
View from the West, the podcast covering Illinois high school football.
It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be great football.
Weekly analysis and reaction from around the western side of the state of Illinois.
This is the game we had circled when the year started.
Follow along on YouTube and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's big-time football out there tonight, and I know we can play big-time football.
View from the West. We got you covered.
Are you looking for the Quad City's best chips and salsa? There's only one dude to turn to.
Right on.
Snoop. Hand-cut chips, fried fresh with that crunch you've come to love. And the most addicting salsa with delicious fresh ingredients each and every time. Pick up your chips and salsa, queso, enchiladas, and much more at the Stern Center in Rock Island. To place your order, simply call the man himself. It's Snoop at 309-314-8197 and find out for yourself what the rest of the Quad Cities already loves. Welcome back to Off the Air. It's been a big week, our debut week. We've been blessed to have some really good guests throughout the week, and when it comes to local basketball players that have done big things or are continuing to do big things. Chase and Randall was earlier in the week, and this guy's right there in the same breath when it comes to my opinion. It's the one and only Brock Harding joining me, the former Maroon state champion. And Brock, I got to talk to you about the state championship stuff in a second, because I compared and contrast you and Chasen. And I'll get your opinion in a sec. I want you to be thinking about that, because Chasen claims something that I think you're probably going to disagree with. But before we get to that, first and foremost, thank you for coming on the debut week of this stupid little show that I started.
For sure. I mean, I'm excited to be here. I think it's a great idea. Just glad to be a part of the debut week and be able to tune in for the many years to come.
I hope so. So you guys always leave us hanging a little bit, always keep us in suspense. Take us back to, I think, Tuesday night. I'm getting my days all confused. Tuesday night. You guys are down 15 in the second half to a good Nebraska team, come back and win. How important was it to right the ship and get that one on Tuesday night?
I think coming off pretty, I'd say all the guys kind of felt embarrassed about our loss at Wisconsin. Just didn't play the kind of basketball that we wanted to play. We knew that, kind of dealt with that night. Had a good 2 days of prep, came out, thought we played really well at the start of the game. Then they went on a little bit of a run. We dealt with that a little bit, ended up closing the half out, down 3, talked how we needed to come out. Our defense was good. I mean, held them to 34 points and a half. I mean, and we had not been great at keeping teams under their average. We did really good in the first half. They came out in the second half. I think they scored 18 points within the first 5 minutes of the half. So we kind of sat down at that first media timeout, just said, hey, like, they just scored this many points in 5 minutes. We got 15 minutes to kind of come back and do our own thing. We just need to relax. We don't need hero shots. We don't need any of this. And then everybody